My name is Jessa. I closed a $5 million deal, our firm's biggest yet. I built the system, managed the compliance, delivered the solution. At the celebration dinner, my dad raised a glass and said, "To Nathan, our star, and to Jessa, his lucky sidekick." The room laughed. I didn't. That night, I opened my laptop, logged into the dev console, typed one line, activate.backdoor protocol, Nathan Ron override. Within minutes, every system locked, every account froze, and the money? Gone, vaulted, untouchable. Before I tell you how we got here, tell me where you're watching from. Tap like, subscribe, and let's go deeper. I was practically raised inside a server room. While other kids in my grade spent summers at theme parks or sports camps, I spent mine curled up behind the front desk at Ron Avery Co, my father's consulting firm, sorting Ethernet cables and labeling hard drives. We didn't talk about feelings in our house, or birthdays, or dreams. We talked about the business. Capitalized, sacred, the unspoken firstborn of our family. My father, Ron, founded the firm when he was 29, right after getting passed over for a promotion at his old job. It started with just him and a used Dell, making cold calls and pitching systems integration for medium-sized accounting firms. He grew it into a multi-million-dollar operation by the time I hit middle school. By then, he was already calling my older brother Nathan a future closer. Nathan, 3 years older, full of charm and confidence, was the golden child. The kid who could sell air conditioners in a snowstorm and make people thank him afterward. He was athletic, bold, always surrounded by people. Everyone said he had natural leadership energy. I was the opposite. Quiet, precise. I took things apart and rebuilt them for fun. I taught myself basic HTML at 11 and built a dummy website for our dog grooming lady. By 13, I was debugging plugins for my dad's internal CRM. At 18, I wrote a script that cut the invoice processing time in half. I remember showing it to Dad. He glanced at it and said, "Smart girl, you'll make someone's right hand someday." That was his version of praise. I used to wonder if he didn't know how to say more, or if he just didn't think I deserved it. Nathan got all the shine, and I got the cables. Even in college, when I was neck-deep in computer science theory, I'd fly home on breaks to help Dad's firm with internal audits, server migrations, or client-side issues that no one else could untangle. I became the invisible engine. Never asked for credit. Dad used to joke, "Nathan brings the steak, Jessa brings the potatoes." Everyone laughed, including me. I told myself it didn't matter, that what I was building spoke louder than what was being said. When I graduated and came back full-time, it was almost unspoken. There was no orientation or welcome party. I just showed up to my desk one Monday and started rewriting the disaster that was our front-end portal. Over the next 3 years, I rebuilt nearly everything. Transitioned our architecture to cloud-based hosting, integrated a single sign-on system for all clients, secured SOC 2 compliance, reorganized and automated the CRM pipeline, built out a documentation platform that cut onboarding time by 50%. I also started managing a small development team, training interns, writing every line of back-end code for our biggest client projects. But in every client meeting, I was introduced as our tech support, or worse, Nathan's sister. Even when I'd led the entire build, even when I'd worked nights to fix his mistakes, Nathan could pitch. He was good at it. But pitches don't run systems. Code does. Security protocols do. Seamless APIs do. I didn't expect parades or bonuses, but I expected to be seen. Instead, I got nods, dismissive hand waves, and sometimes, just sometimes, a passive smile from Dad that felt more like ownership than pride. What hurt most wasn't being overlooked. It was being treated like I was grateful to be there, like my work wasn't mine, like I was just lucky to be in the room Nathan and Dad built. But here's the thing about being underestimated for long enough. You start to take notes, quietly, relentlessly. You build the things no one else wants to learn. You learn the things no one else sees coming, and eventually you stop trying to be visible because you realize power doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs access, and I had all of it. It wasn't just one moment. It was 1,000 paper cuts, small slights, quiet credits erased before they even touched daylight. Things I used to shrug off until they piled high enough to feel like walls. I remember the first time I felt it in my bones, that unmistakable stomach-turning realization that I was used, not seen. It was during our internal overhaul 3 years ago. We were hemorrhaging money on inefficiencies, lost time on task duplication, too many manual processes. I stayed late for 6 weeks straight, building a new internal system from scratch. It automated project tracking, restructured file management, and centralized every client dashboard. When I finally deployed it, our monthly operating costs dropped by more than $17,000. That's over $200,000 saved annually. The next week, Nathan presented our new ops process during an all-hands meeting. He walked the team through the features with a clicker in one hand and a grin on his face, said phrases like, "We've really tightened the ship, folks. This was a strategic lift from all sides. Big win for the firm." Not once did he mention my name. Not once did Dad ask who'd actually built it. They applauded him, took a team picture, posted it on LinkedIn. I stood in the back, invisible, holding the actual deployment logs on my laptop. My name was in every single commit. No one asked. Another time, I rewrote a buggy integration for a healthcare client that had been glitching for months, something Nathan's team kept patching with superficial workarounds. I stayed up 2 nights in a row to fix it properly and prevent HIPAA noncompliance. No one knew how close we came to losing the entire contract. In the client follow-up meeting, Nathan explained it as a team fix. Just one of those things we had to squash together. Team effort, really. I didn't correct him. Because by then, I'd learned what happens when I do. At best, I'd get a polite nod and a "good catch, Jess." At worst, I'd be labeled emotional, defensive, hard to work with. It wasn't just internal. Last year, Forbes ran a feature on family-run tech companies. They interviewed Ron and Nathan. The headline read, "The Avery Legacy, Father and Son Building the Future of Consulting." I read it 3 times, thinking surely there'd be a mention of me. A sentence, a footnote, nothing, not even in the caption of the photo I'd taken for them. I showed the article to my friend Lena over coffee. She winced, like she'd just bitten into something bitter. "Maybe you need your own PR team," she said. I smiled, but the kind of smile that tastes like blood. Even as a kid, this was the pattern. When I was 12, I built a working calculator from scratch for a 7th grade science fair. Not a kit. Not one of those cardboard posters. A functioning calculator with a simple motherboard and a shell I carved from a used kitchen timer. When I showed it to Dad, he nodded. "You'll make a great assistant someday." Assistant, not engineer, not architect, not innovator. Assistant. Mom, on the other hand, got it. She was the only one who did. She'd sit with me while I scribbled flowcharts on napkins, asked me to explain APIs like she actually wanted to know. When she passed away during my sophomore year of college, suddenly a stroke, I didn't just lose a parent. I lost my only mirror. After she died, I stopped trying to be understood. I started documenting instead. Every project I built, I journaled. Every system I rewrote, I kept logs. I didn't post them, didn't share them. Just stored them on an encrypted drive, my quiet archive of proof. Not for others, for me. So I wouldn't forget what I'd done. I kept working, quietly, carefully. And one weekend, after the second time Nathan lost a password recovery spreadsheet and nearly took out a subnetwork, I wrote a new contingency protocol. It was a backdoor access clause, a security key nested deep in the root files of our infrastructure, untraceable, unnamed, with one purpose: to instantly lock all user accounts, freeze all transaction nodes, divert escrowed funds to a secure vault under my control, and suspend access to every active API key in our internal system. It was meant to be used in case of a breach. Redundancy, an emergency kill switch. It required biometric input, 2-factor authentication, and my master key, something no one even knew existed. Not Ron, not Nathan, not the senior engineer who'd skimmed my documentation and assumed I was just thorough. I didn't build it with revenge in mind. I built it because I knew one day they might burn the house down with their carelessness, and I'd be the only one holding a fire extinguisher. But as the months passed and the pattern held, as I kept seeing my work turned into someone else's elevator pitch, as I stood in more rooms where I wasn't introduced and read more bios where I didn't exist, I realized something darker. They would never see me. Not really. Not until I was gone, and not until they lost what they thought they controlled. So I stopped waiting for recognition and started preparing for extraction. The deal took 5 months to close. 5 months of audits, back and forth compliance calls, late night security checklists, and precision level API mapping. I led it from start to finish. The client was a fast-scaling medical software firm expanding into 3 new states. Their infrastructure was a mess. Fragmented databases, unprotected endpoints, zero true redundancy. They needed a custom-built solution to centralize their patient record sync and meet HIPAA compliance by Q4. Nathan made the first pitch. That was his strength. He sold the vision, the future. But after that meeting, I took over the heavy lifting. I diagrammed every module, wrote every endpoint call, drafted our full compliance roadmap, handled every question from their paranoid legal team. I even trained their in-house engineers personally. Because I knew one bad migration would jeopardize everything. It wasn't just about delivering, it was about protecting our firm from liability if anything broke 6 months down the line. When the deal finally came through, I didn't even celebrate. I just exhaled. The contract came in at just over $5 million, largest we'd ever signed. The signing was held at the client's headquarters, just 5 of us in a sleek glass conference room with dry air and catered sandwiches. Their CFO, Amanda, shook my hand firmly. "Jessa," she said, looking me in the eyes, "you're the reason we said yes. Your team's delivery has been flawless. You made us feel safe." I nodded, thanked her, quietly scanned the final PDF for any last-minute changes, and signed my name at the bottom. Nathan signed after me, smiling like a senator. On the drive back to the office, he played music on the Bluetooth and told Ron over the phone, "Deal closed. In the bag, just like I said it would be." That night, Dad hosted a private dinner at the club. 12 people, some execs, a few old family friends, us. I wore a blazer. Nathan wore one too, only his had gold-stitched cuffs and a pocket square. We sat at a long polished table beneath dim chandeliers. Steak and scallops, expensive wine, fake laughs. At dessert, Dad stood, raised his glass, and said, "To Nathan, you've got a gift, son. You walk into a room and make people believe. You make this family proud." He looked at me then, smile still wide. "And Jessa, great support as always." There was clinking glass, light applause. I didn't blink. Nathan leaned closer and whispered, "You're the best little coder sidekick I've got." My fork paused midair. I didn't say a word. I just finished my bite, swallowed, and sat through the rest of the dinner like I wasn't disappearing by inches. I walked home alone. The night air was cold in a way I couldn't feel anymore. In my apartment, I slipped off my shoes, made a cup of tea, and sat down at my desk. No music, no lights beyond the screen. I opened the console, pulled up the contingency clause, the one I had written more than a year ago when I still hoped it would never be necessary. It was buried deep, disguised as a system diagnostic. Trace-locked, untouchable. One command, built with biometric keys, 2-factor auth, admin override logs, redirection protocols that would send all active escrow funds into a secure, air-gapped holding account with one authorized decryptor. Me. It would lock all system accounts, including Nathan and Ron's, freeze every active client login, cut access to the client portal and admin panel, encrypt all pending project deployment keys, notify no one. It wasn't sabotage. It was protection. And I was the only one with the key. I typed, activate.backdoor protocol Nathan Ron override. The screen blinked. Cursor flashed. I hovered my hand over the fingerprint scanner. My heartbeat didn't even speed up. I wasn't doing this to get even. I was doing it because the system I had built no longer belonged to me. It had been taken, piece by piece, smile by smile, until I became a shadow holding a foundation that no one wanted to admit existed. And now they would know what it meant to stand on something that disappears. I pressed enter. The screen went black, and I slept the best I had in years. They showed up at 6:41 a.m., no warning, no call, just 3 sharp knocks on my apartment door, heavy, impatient, angry. I didn't have to guess. I opened the door and found my father standing there in his gray wool coat, eyes already blazing. Nathan was just behind him, lips tight, fists clenched, radiating pure panic. I stepped aside without saying a word. They walked in like they still owned the room. "Jessa," Ron barked, spinning toward me as soon as the door clicked shut. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't flinch. "Good morning to you, too." "Don't play games," Nathan snapped. "You locked the entire system. We can't even access our admin panel. Clients are emailing me nonstop. Someone's threatening legal action. Did you even think about what this does to our credibility? I raised an eyebrow. Our credibility? Ron stepped between us. You crossed a line. Whatever this is, it's not professional. You've jeopardized everything we've built. I turned toward my desk, opened my laptop, and tapped a few keys. The console lit up. Audit logs, protocol records, deployment dates, timestamps, metadata. I rotated the screen so they could both see. This clause, I said calmly, was written 10 months ago. It's buried in the infrastructure compliance tree, fully documented, built as a contingency in case of catastrophic breach or organizational compromise. Nathan leaned in. You never told anyone. You never asked, I replied. Ron shook his head. This is sabotage. No, I said, locking eyes with him. This is support. He blinked. What? You called me support. Over and over, so I supported the system completely. I built in the very protection you all refused to acknowledge we needed. And when the moment came, I used it. Nathan paced in a tight circle. Okay, fine. You made your point, he snapped. Now unlock it. I smiled slightly. No. Ron's voice dropped an octave. Jessa, enough. I turned the laptop back toward me and sat. I'll unlock it, I said, but only under one condition. Nathan scoffed. Here we go. You'll transfer full ownership of the medical software deal to me, I said, voice steady. All residuals, all licensing, all client control. Ron opened his mouth, but I kept going. My equity in the firm will be bought out at market value with a 10% premium. Ron's eyes widened. That's absurd. And finally, I said, looking directly at him, you'll remove my name from every system, every team log, every org chart. I'll be gone. No ties, no calls, no favors, no credits. I disappear, and so does your dependency on my code. Nathan muttered something under his breath. Ron's jaw flexed. You destroy the company over hurt feelings? I stood, walked over slowly, stopped just inches from him. You destroyed me over 10 years of silence, I said. 10 years of watching my work become someone else's applause. 10 years of being called a sidekick in rooms I built. The silence between us stretched. And then I said one more thing, softer. I didn't lock the system to ruin you. I locked it to finally free myself. Ron looked away. Nathan crossed his arms. They knew. They didn't have a choice. Because I had already done the work, and they had already signed every document that made this legal, even if they didn't understand it at the time. After 3 minutes of silence, Ron muttered, Fine, we'll draft the agreement. I nodded. I already did. It's in your inbox. All it needs is a signature. Nathan exhaled loudly, like a balloon deflating. He didn't even look at me when they left. The door shut quietly behind them. I stood in the middle of my living room, fingers pressed to my temples, and for the first time in a decade, I wasn't part of their company anymore. I was finally mine. They showed up at 6:41 a.m., no warning, no call. Just 3 sharp knocks on my apartment door, heavy, impatient, angry. I didn't have to guess. I opened the door and found my father standing there in his gray wool coat, eyes already blazing. Nathan was just behind him, lips tight, fists clenched, radiating pure panic. I stepped aside without saying a word. They walked in like they still owned the room. Jessa, Ron barked, spinning toward me as soon as the door clicked shut. What the hell did you do? I didn't flinch. Good morning to you, too. Don't play games, Nathan snapped. You locked the entire system. We can't even access our admin panel. Clients are emailing me nonstop. Someone's threatening legal action. Did you even think about what this does to our credibility? I raised an eyebrow. Our credibility? Ron stepped between us. You crossed a line. Whatever this is, it's not professional. You've jeopardized everything we've built. I turned toward my desk, opened my laptop, and tapped a few keys. The console lit up. Audit logs, protocol records, deployment dates, timestamps, metadata. I rotated the screen so they could both see. This clause, I said calmly, was written 10 months ago. It's buried in the infrastructure compliance tree, fully documented, built as a contingency in case of catastrophic breach or organizational compromise. Nathan leaned in. You never told anyone. You never asked, I replied. Ron shook his head. This is sabotage. No, I said, locking eyes with him. This is support. He blinked. What? You called me support over and over, so I supported the system completely. I built in the very protection you all refused to acknowledge we needed. And when the moment came, I used it. Nathan paced in a tight circle. Okay, fine, you made your point, he snapped. Now unlock it. I smiled slightly. No. Ron's voice dropped an octave. Jessa, enough. I turned the laptop back toward me and sat. I'll unlock it, I said, but only under one condition. Nathan scoffed. Here we go. You'll transfer full ownership of the medical software deal to me, I said, voice steady. All residuals, all licensing, all client control. Ron opened his mouth, but I kept going. My equity in the firm will be bought out at market value with a 10% premium. Ron's eyes widened. That's absurd. And finally, I said, looking directly at him, you'll remove my name from every system, every team log, every org chart. I'll be gone. No ties, no calls, no favors, no credits. I disappear, and so does your dependency on my code. Nathan muttered something under his breath. Ron's jaw flexed. You'd destroy the company over hurt feelings? I stood, walked over slowly, stopped just inches from him. You destroyed me over 10 years of silence, I said. 10 years of watching my work become someone else's applause. 10 years of being called a sidekick in rooms I built. The silence between us stretched, and then I said one more thing, softer. I didn't lock the system to ruin you. I locked it to finally free myself. Ron looked away. Nathan crossed his arms. They knew. They didn't have a choice, because I had already done the work, and they had already signed every document that made this legal, even if they didn't understand it at the time. After 3 minutes of silence, Ron muttered, Fine, we'll draft the agreement. I nodded. I already did. It's in your inbox. All it needs is a signature. Nathan exhaled loudly, like a balloon deflating. He didn't even look at me when they left. The door shut quietly behind them. I stood in the middle of my living room, fingers pressed to my temples, and for the first time in a decade, I wasn't part of their company anymore. I was finally mine. The first week after I left felt surreal. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet. Like walking out of a loud stadium and realizing you'd been holding your breath the entire game. I slept in for 2 days, woke up at 9 instead of 5, made coffee slowly, standing barefoot by the window. For the first time in years, there were no Slack notifications waiting for me, no red flags in the deployment log, no one asking if I could just jump on one quick call. It was like the world exhaled with me. By the end of that week, I'd filed the paperwork for my own LLC. Nothing big. Just a boutique consultancy, 3 people, clean code, focused projects, no bloated org charts, no layers of useless meetings, just brains and build. I named it Firestem, after a small, nearly invisible plant that thrives after forest fires. It felt fitting. The medical software firm called me before I could call them. Amanda, the CFO, said simply, We're moving our account. If you're building something new, we want in. I smiled. I'm building it under my name this time. Within 2 months, 2 more clients followed. Quietly, without making a fuss. They'd worked with me in the past. They knew where the real work had always come from. My home office became my command center. Light-filled, organized, peaceful, a shelf of reference books, a soft tan rug, a wall of sticky notes with color-coded tasks, a window full of succulents and snake plants I never used to have time to water. I built a new platform, too, this time for small clinics managing remote patient logs. The idea had come to me during one of those late nights buried in HIPAA forms. I coded the first prototype myself. No Nathan, no Ron, just me, and a whiteboard covered in messy diagrams and caffeine stains. It was good. No, it was better than good, because it had my name on it. And this time, no one could erase me from the credits. I also began mentoring 2 young women in tech. Kira was 22, just starting her first dev job, and already questioning her place in a room full of loud, dismissive men. Lena was 28, returning to coding after 5 years raising her daughter, convinced she'd lost her edge. I met with them weekly, showed them how to document everything, taught them the language of systems and silence, and how to write code that spoke even when others tried to talk over them. One night, after a long session reviewing Lena's architecture sketch, she asked me, How do you know when you've built something good? I told her, when no one can steal it from you, even if they try. That stayed with her. I know because she quoted it back to me 2 weeks later. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about my father's company. A developer I used to mentor mentioned they'd lost 2 major clients when Nathan couldn't answer technical questions. A mutual friend said Ron was consulting now instead of leading. No one confirmed anything out loud, but the silence around their updates spoke volumes. I never gloated, didn't toast champagne, Didn't post cryptic status updates about leveling up or cutting toxic ties. I just worked. I built. I taught. And I remembered. Not the rage, but the lessons. It was never about revenge, never about burning things down or watching them fail. It was about being seen. And when that failed, I chose to walk and build something that didn't require anyone else's permission to exist. Silence used to feel like suffocation, like sitting in a room full of people who were reading the wrong script, one where your name wasn't even written in the margins. I spent years inside that silence, learning how to shrink, how to nod, how to let other people finish my sentences and take the credit. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing silence as punishment. I started seeing it as practice. Because silence didn't just make me invisible. It made me sharp. It taught me how to observe without being observed, how to listen for the moment no one else could hear, how to build systems so tight they could lock an entire company with a single keystroke. Most importantly, silence taught me how to leave, not in a storm of slamming doors or a blaze of dramatic monologues, but in stillness, with precision, with every document lined up, every clause airtight, every bite accounted for. And when I finally walked away, no one could say I didn't earn it. These days, I speak when I want to, not when I'm invited. I no longer need a seat at the table. I've built my own, thank you. Once a year, I travel somewhere new, not to post about it, just to exist. To remember that I don't need to do in order to be worthy of space. I spend most of my time now building tools that help other women like me, coders, creators, quiet builders, protect what they make. I teach them how to write code that can't be rewritten by louder voices. I remind them that ownership isn't just about money, it's about knowing where the keys are and keeping them. I write, I mentor, I breathe. And sometimes, when the wind is quiet and I've had just enough coffee, I think back to that night. The night I opened the console, typed one line, and pressed enter. He called me a lucky sidekick. But when I hit enter, the system reminded him who built the foundation. And while they scrambled for the keys, I took the door and walked out free. Have you ever been sidelined in your own success story? Comment below. Let's support every woman who's ever been called just the assistant. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it just means you're already planning your exit. Thank you for listening. You matter, and your silence might just be your greatest strength in disguise.